When the first light appears, you are given a question, though no voice speaks it. It is a question placed before you by existence itself. Will you rise as the ruler of your own mind, or will you rise as its prisoner? Most people wake and immediately surrender. They reach for noise, for distraction, for the comfort of habit. They allow the outer world to invade the inner sanctuary before they have even stood on their feet. And in doing so, they spend the rest of the day chasing what they should have already possessed: clarity, strength, and command over themselves. But there is a quiet power hidden in the early hours, a power few ever claim. In that fragile space, before the world makes its demands, the mind is still soft, still open, still capable of being shaped. What you do in these moments does not merely prepare you for the day, it prepares you for the person you will become. Understand this. Your life is not formed in the noise of the afternoon, nor in the exhaustion of the night. It is formed in the morning, when discipline must stand without applause, and intention must stand without witness. It is there, in silence, that you decide whether you will live deliberately or drift unconsciously. You may believe that one morning is insignificant, but the mind does not measure in single days. It measures in repetition. Each morning you rise with purpose. You cast a vote for a stronger self. Each morning you rise in weakness. You reinforce the chains you cannot see. Before the 8th hour arrives, before the world begins to pull at you, there is an opportunity to do something rare, to reorder your thoughts, to remember who you are, to remind yourself that your mind does not belong to your fears, nor to your comfort, nor to your past habits. It belongs to you. And if you are willing to claim that ownership, if you are willing to stand guard at the gates of your own consciousness, while the rest of the world sleeps, then slowly, quietly, without spectacle, you will begin to transform. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. When the morning arrives, it does not announce itself with urgency. It does not demand that you become better. It simply opens the door and waits. The light enters quietly, as if it understands that what stands before it is not your body, but your will. In that moment, before you move, before you speak, before you allow the machinery of habit to begin its endless turning, there exists a rare and fragile space, a space where you are not yet who you were yesterday, a space where you are not yet bound by the weaknesses you have repeated, nor strengthened by the discipline you have practiced. You are, for a brief and sacred moment, undefined. Most people do not see this. They wake, but they do not awaken. Their eyes open, but their mind remains asleep, already pulled toward routine, toward comfort, toward the familiar surrender they have rehearsed for years. They rise not as a creator of their day, but as a continuation of their past. And so their life becomes nothing more than repetition, wearing the disguise of progress. But you must understand that the morning is not simply a continuation, it is an offering. It is existence itself placing clay into your hands and asking, without words, what you will shape. Your mind, in these early moments, is softer than at any other time. It has not yet been hardened by opinion, not yet been scattered by the voices of others, not yet been burdened by the illusions of urgency. It is still. It is waiting. And what you place into it now will sink deeper than at any other hour. A single thought held with intention in the morning can echo through your entire day. A single act of discipline can quietly strengthen a part of you that has long been weak. This is why the morning is a place of rebirth. Not because you have become someone new, but because you have been given the authority to decide whether you will remain the same. You may feel the pull to remain where you are. The weight of the body will argue for its comfort. The mind will whisper its excuses with convincing gentleness. It will tell you there is time. It will tell you that one moment more does not matter. But these whispers are not concerned with your growth. They are concerned with your obedience. Because every moment you delay, you reinforce a silent agreement. An agreement that comfort is your master and you are its servant. To rise in the morning with intention is to break that agreement. It is to remind yourself that you are not here merely to experience life, but to direct it. It is to demonstrate in the smallest and most private way that your will still holds authority. This authority is not proven in grand gestures. It is proven in the quiet decision to sit with your thoughts instead of fleeing from them. It is proven in the willingness to face yourself before you face the world. Because when you sit alone in the morning without distraction, you are confronted with what you truly are. Not the image you show others, not the identity you perform, but the reality beneath it. Many avoid this meeting. They rush toward noise because silence reveals too much. It shows them their inconsistencies. It shows them their avoided responsibilities. It shows them the distance between who they are and who they know they could become. But this revelation is not your enemy. It is your beginning, because you cannot command what you refuse to see. The morning gives you the chance to see clearly, to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them, to recognize that you are not the voice of impulse but the one who hears it. And in that recognition, something begins to separate. You begin to understand that your mind is not a fixed object, but a place you are responsible for governing. Each morning you govern it well, its order improves, its strength grows, its obedience becomes easier, and each morning you abandon it, its chaos expands, its resistance becomes stronger, its defiance becomes familiar. You must not underestimate how quickly a neglected mind begins to rule its owner. This is why the early hour matters, because it is the only time when the mind has not yet gathered its defenses. It is the only time when change can enter without resistance, when discipline can be planted without argument. You are not merely preparing for the tasks of the day, you are reshaping the structure through which every task will be experienced. If your mind begins the day scattered, the world will appear scattered. If your mind begins the day weak, every difficulty will appear greater than it is. But if your mind begins the day ordered, steady, and obedient to your will, then even chaos will struggle to disturb you. This is the quiet rebirth the morning offers. Not a rebirth of circumstance, but a rebirth of authority, and authority over the mind is the beginning of all freedom. Because the person who commands their mind in the morning does not spend their day being commanded by their impulses. They do not negotiate with their weakness. They do not wait for motivation to grant them permission. They act because they have remembered something essential, that they are not here to be carried by habit, but to stand above it. In this way, the morning does not change your life all at once. It changes the position from which you live it. It lifts you slowly and quietly, from the level of reaction to the level of direction, while the rest of the world continues forward, unaware that the greatest transformation does not begin with the body, but with the decision made in silence in the first light when no one is watching, and nothing is certain except your willingness to rise and claim yourself once again. There is a subtle tragedy that unfolds in the first moments of most people's days, and it is so common that it no longer appears tragic. A person wakes, not with intention, not with awareness, but with reflex. The hand reaches outward before the mind has even risen inward. The eyes search for light not from the sky but from a screen. Before a single independent thought has been formed, the will has already been handed over to something external. And so the day begins not with self-command, but with surrender. To begin the morning as a servant to impulse is to accept chains, without ever seeing them. Impulse does not shout its authority. It whispers. It suggests comfort. It promises ease. It assures you that nothing important is lost by yielding to it for a few minutes more. Yet those minutes are not empty. They are formative. They teach your mind who is in control. When you obey the first impulse of the day, you set a precedent. You tell yourself without words that your desires are to be followed, not examined, that your habits are to be indulged, not questioned, that your comfort holds greater power than your intention. And once this silent agreement is made, the rest of the day unfolds beneath it. Consider how fragile the mind is upon waking. It is neither fully disciplined nor fully distracted. It stands at a threshold. In this state, whatever you allow in first takes root more deeply. If the first act of your day is unconscious, the mind absorbs that pattern. It learns that reaction is its natural posture, It learns that it need not wait for direction. It learns that it may lead you wherever it pleases, and a mind that leads without discipline will not lead toward excellence. The danger is not in a single act of indulgence. The danger is in repetition. Each morning you choose impulse over intention. You strengthen a pathway. You make it easier for the next impulse to be obeyed. Over time, obedience to impulse becomes automatic, and intention becomes effortful. What should have been natural, self-command, begins to feel like resistance. You may believe that your strength will appear later in the day, that you will reclaim your discipline once the work begins, once the responsibilities arrive. But strength does not appear on demand. It is cultivated in moments when it would be easier not to act. If you cannot command yourself in the quiet privacy of the morning when no one is watching, what reason is there to believe you will command yourself when the pressures of the world begin to press upon you? The one who begins the day as a servant to impulse spends the rest of it negotiating with weakness. Every task becomes heavier. Every distraction becomes more tempting. Every difficulty feels amplified, not because the world has grown more hostile, but because the inner foundation was not secured. Impulse thrives on immediacy. It seeks what is easy, what is pleasurable, what demands no effort. Yet what is immediate is rarely what is meaningful. The morning presents you with a choice between what feels good now and what will strengthen you later. To choose the first is effortless. To choose the second is an act of quiet courage. But many avoid this courage because they misunderstand the nature of freedom. They believe freedom lies in doing what they feel, in following the current of desire wherever it flows. Yet this is not freedom. It is drift. True freedom is the ability to decide your course regardless of how you feel in the moment. When you wake and immediately obey impulse, you declare that feeling is your ruler, that mood is your master, that circumstance dictates your direction. And though this declaration is silent, it is powerful. It echoes through your behavior, shaping your responses, influencing your posture toward challenges. You may not notice the shift at first. You may still accomplish tasks. You may still fulfill obligations. But beneath the surface, a subtle weakening occurs. Your confidence erodes, not because you have failed publicly, but because you have witnessed your own private surrender. The mind keeps record of these moments. It knows when you have chosen ease over effort. It knows when you have allowed it to wander without guidance. And when the mind loses respect for your authority, it becomes harder to command. The danger of beginning the day as a servant is not that you will fail once. It is that you will forget you were ever meant to lead. The world will gladly command you if you do not command yourself. Messages, demands, expectations, crises, these will fill the vacuum left by your inaction. If you do not decide how your day begins, someone else will decide for you. If you do not establish your priorities in the silence of the morning, the noise of the day will assign them. To wake with intention is to stand guard at the gate of your consciousness. To say before anything enters that you will choose what deserves your attention. To delay the pull of impulse long enough to remember who you are and what you value. This delay may seem small. It may be nothing more than resisting the urge to reach outward and instead turning inward. But in that pause lies power. In that pause you demonstrate that impulse must wait for permission, that desire must submit to reason, that habit must answer to purpose. And once you establish this order in the first moments of your day, it becomes easier to maintain it in the hours that follow. The servant rises and asks, "What do I feel like doing?" The master rises and asks, "What must be done?" This difference appears subtle, yet it separates those who drift from those who direct. The servant is led by appetite. The master is guided by principle. The servant reacts. The master initiates. If you begin your day reacting, you remain in reaction. If you begin by initiating, you continue to initiate. There is no dramatic transformation in this practice, no sudden surge of power that announces your victory. It is quieter than that. It is the steady strengthening of a muscle long neglected. At first it trembles, it resists, it complains, but with repetition it grows. Each morning you deny impulse its immediate satisfaction. You weaken its authority. Each morning you act according to intention rather than mood. You reinforce your sovereignty. Over time, something remarkable occurs. The impulses do not vanish, but they lose their urgency. They knock, but they no longer break down the door. They suggest, but they no longer command. This is the reward of refusing to begin the day as a servant. You gradually reclaim the position that was always meant to be yours. Do not imagine that this is a matter of productivity alone. It is a matter of identity. Every morning you answer the question, who governs your life? Is it the shifting tide of desire or the steady hand of reason? If you allow impulse to decide how you rise, it will attempt to decide how you live. It will seek comfort when effort is required. It will seek distraction when focus is necessary. It will seek escape when courage is demanded. But if you rise and immediately assert your intention, if you claim even a few moments to think, to breathe, to choose deliberately, then you alter the pattern. You remind yourself that you are not a creature of reflex but a being capable of direction. The danger was never in the morning itself. It was in forgetting that the morning is a test. A quiet test, invisible to others, yet decisive in its consequences. Pass this test, and the day begins with strength beneath you. Fail it repeatedly, and weakness becomes familiar. The choice is presented daily, without accusation, without pressure. The light arrives, the mind awakens, and the question stands before you once more. Will you rise as the servant of your impulses, or will you rise as their master? There is a moment in every morning so small that most people step over it without awareness. It does not appear important. It carries no announcement, no visible consequence. It is simply the moment when you choose your first action. Yet hidden, inside that choice is something far greater than the action itself. Hidden inside it is the quiet shaping of who you are. Identity is not formed in declarations. It is formed in repetitions. It is not what you say once that defines you, but what you do consistently when no one is watching and nothing is required of you except your own honesty. The morning is where these repetitions begin, and because they begin there, they carry a unique power. They occur before the world has placed its hands upon you. They occur before excuses have gathered their strength. In these early moments, you are closest to your unguarded self. You have not yet begun performing for others. You have not yet begun justifying your choices. What you do here is pure. It is not done for recognition. It is done because it reflects the truth of your discipline or the truth of your surrender. Many believe that destiny is shaped by large decisions, by dramatic turning points that divide life into before and after. But destiny rarely announces itself in this way. It is built quietly, in habits so small they appear insignificant. The way you rise, the way you think, the way you respond to the first resistance of the day. When you choose to act with intention, in the morning, even in something simple, you send a signal to your mind. You tell it that you are a person who acts deliberately. You tell it that you do not wait for force or pressure to move you. You move yourself. This signal does not fade when the morning ends. It travels with you. It alters the way you approach difficulty. It alters the way you see yourself, because the mind is always watching. It is always gathering evidence about who you are. It does not listen to your promises. It listens to your behavior. If your behavior reflects discipline, the mind begins to believe that discipline is your nature. If your behavior reflects avoidance, the mind begins to believe that avoidance is your nature. And once the mind accepts something as your nature, it stops questioning it. This is why early actions matter. They are not isolated. They are cumulative. Each one adds weight to a scale that is always measuring your character. When you rise early and do what is difficult, even when comfort invites you to remain still, you cast a vote. You cast a vote for strength. When you delay, when you negotiate with your own weakness, when you allow impulse to decide for you, you cast a vote for weakness. No single vote decides the outcome, but over time, the result becomes clear. You may wonder why discipline sometimes feels unnatural, why it feels like you are forcing yourself against your own current. It is because your past votes have favored ease. The mind has grown accustomed to it. It has learned to expect it, but this expectation can be changed. Each intentional action in the morning begins to rewrite it. At first, the change is invisible. You will not feel transformed. You will not feel powerful. You will simply feel resistance. But beneath that resistance, something begins to shift. The mind begins to notice the new pattern. It begins to question its old assumptions. It begins to realize that you are no longer obeying automatically. This realization is the beginning of self-respect. Self-respect is not created by praise. It is created by witnessing your own discipline. It is created when you see yourself act according to principle instead of convenience. When you prove to yourself that you can be trusted. Trust in yourself is built the same way trust in another is built. Through consistency, through reliability, through repeated evidence that your actions align with your intentions. The morning provides the first opportunity each day to provide this evidence. If you betray yourself in this first opportunity, the betrayal lingers. Even if you accomplish, much later a part of you remembers that you began the day by yielding. This memory weakens your foundation, but if you honor your intention in the morning, even in a small way, that honor strengthens you. It becomes easier to act with integrity in the hours that follow. Because you are not starting from weakness. You are starting from proof. The world will test you in many ways. It will offer distractions. It will present obstacles. It will create uncertainty. In these moments, you will not rise to the level of your hopes. You will fall to the level of your habits. If your morning habits are weak, your response will be weak. If your morning habits are strong, your response will reflect that strength. This is how early actions shape destiny, not by changing the world, but by changing your readiness to face it. You do not control the events that await you, but you control the condition in which you meet them, and that condition is determined in large part by how you begin. A person who begins the day with discipline carries an invisible advantage. They move differently. They decide differently. They endure differently. Not because they are superior, but because they have aligned themselves with their own authority. This alignment removes internal conflict. It removes hesitation. It removes the quiet doubt that asks, "Will I follow through?" Because they already have. Each morning they have proven it. The person who neglects this practice carries a different burden. They carry uncertainty about themselves. They question their own resolve. They hesitate not because the task is impossible, but because their foundation is unstable. This instability spreads. It affects not only their actions, but their identity. They begin to see themselves as someone who intends, but does not act. Someone who hopes, but does not follow through. This belief becomes a limitation more powerful than any external obstacle. But the reverse is also true. When you act with intention, each morning, you begin to see yourself as someone who does what must be done. Someone who does not wait for permission from comfort. Someone who does not depend on motivation. This identity becomes a source of strength. Because once you believe that you are disciplined, discipline becomes easier. Once you believe that you are reliable, reliability becomes natural. This belief is not created by imagination. It is created by evidence. And the morning is where that evidence is first written. You are not merely preparing for the tasks ahead. You are preparing the person who will perform them. You are not merely completing actions. You are becoming someone through those actions. Every morning, without exception, the opportunity appears again. Quiet, unassuming, easily ignored. An opportunity not to impress others but to shape yourself. And whether you recognize it or not, whether you act on it or not, the process continues. Your early actions are always shaping your identity. They are always casting votes. They are always deciding slowly and silently the direction your life will take. There is a kind of silence that most people fear, though they rarely admit it. It is not the silence of the empty room, nor the silence of the sleeping world, but the silence in which there is nothing to distract you from yourself. The morning offers this silence freely, before the voices begin, before the demands gather, before the expectations of others begin pressing against your mind. It offers you a space untouched, where you may stand alone with your thoughts and see clearly what usually remains hidden beneath noise. Many avoid this space without realizing they are avoiding it. They rush to fill it. They reach for distraction as if it were nourishment, when in truth it is escape. They allow their attention to scatter outward because they have not learned to remain inward. Yet in doing so, they surrender the greatest advantage the morning provides, because intentional solitude is not emptiness, it is preparation. When you are alone with your mind in the early hour, you are not merely existing. You are observing. You are remembering that you are not the chaos of your thoughts, but the one who witnesses them. This distinction is subtle, but it changes everything. Without it, you are pulled in every direction your mind wanders. With it, you begin to choose which thoughts deserve your energy and which do not. The world does not teach you to do this. The world teaches you to react. It teaches you to answer quickly, to move quickly, to consume quickly. It praises speed, even when speed leads to error. But the morning stands outside this urgency. It does not demand that you hurry. It invites you to be still long enough to regain order. Order within the mind does not appear on its own. Left unattended, the mind becomes crowded. It collects unfinished concerns, imagined fears, remembered embarrassments, and anticipated conflicts. These thoughts accumulate quietly, and when the day begins, they follow you. They cloud your perception. They weaken your focus. They turn simple tasks into heavy burdens. But when you enter solitude intentionally, before the world intrudes, you are given the chance to sort what you carry. You are given the chance to examine your thoughts instead of being ruled by them. You may notice anxieties that do not deserve your attention. You may notice desires that do not align with your values. You may notice doubts that have no foundation except repetition. In solitude, these become visible, and once visible, they become easier to challenge. Without solitude, they remain invisible rulers. This is why so few people truly command themselves. They have never created the distance necessary to see themselves clearly. They have never stepped outside the current of distraction long enough to realize they are being carried. The morning offers you the shore. When you sit in that early quiet, you begin to reclaim something that was gradually taken from you. The ability to direct your own mind, not through force but through awareness. You begin to see that many of your thoughts are not instructions. They are suggestions. And suggestions do not require obedience. This realization brings a kind of calm strength. A strength that does not depend on circumstance because it exists within your response to circumstance. Intentional solitude also reminds you of your responsibility. During the day, it is easy to forget this. The pace of events creates the illusion that you are being pushed, that you have no choice but to react. But in the morning, when nothing is pushing you, you remember that direction must come from you. If you do not decide who you will be before the world arrives, the world will decide for you. It will assign you urgency where patience is needed. It will assign you distraction where focus is needed. It will assign you emotion where reason is needed. Solitude allows you to choose differently. It allows you to begin the day from a position of authorship instead of submission. This authorship is not dramatic, it is quiet. It is the simple act of deciding your posture before circumstances attempt to shape it. You may decide that you will meet difficulty with calm instead of frustration. You may decide that you will act with discipline instead of delay. You may decide that you will not allow temporary discomfort to dictate permanent choices. These decisions made in solitude become anchors. When the noise arrives, when pressure increases, when impulse urges you toward the familiar path of least resistance, these anchors hold you, not perfectly, not without effort, but with far greater strength than if they had never been placed. Without solitude, there are no anchors. There is only reaction. Many believe they lack discipline, when in truth they lack solitude. They have never given themselves the space to establish order. They have never paused long enough to remember their authority. Because authority over oneself is not established in the middle of chaos. It is established in moments of stillness. The morning provides these moments freely, but it does not force you to use them. It allows you to ignore them, and most do. They enter the day already divided, already scattered, already weakened by the absence of reflection. They spend their energy trying to recover clarity that could have been established at the beginning. But clarity, once lost, is harder to regain. When you protect your solitude in the morning, you protect your clarity. You create a boundary between yourself and the world. Not to escape the world, but to prepare for it. This preparation is invisible to others. They will not see you sitting in silence. They will not hear the decisions you make. They will not witness the ordering of your thoughts. But they will see the result. They will see it in your steadiness when others are agitated. They will see it in your focus when others are distracted. They will see it in your restraint when others are reactive. They will believe this strength appeared naturally. They will not see that it was built in solitude. Solitude also teaches you endurance. Because to sit alone with yourself is not always comfortable. You may encounter thoughts you would rather avoid. You may face truths you have delayed acknowledging. But facing them in the morning weakens their power over you during the day. What is faced voluntarily becomes less frightening. What is avoided grows in shadow. This is why solitude is not merely beneficial. It is necessary. Without it, you remain a stranger to yourself, and a person who is a stranger to themselves cannot lead themselves. The morning gives you the opportunity to become familiar again, to listen, to observe, to remember. Not who the world expects you to be, but who you are capable of being. In this remembering, there is strength. In this strength, there is order. And in this order, there is a quiet readiness that stays with you. As the sun rises higher, as the noise grows louder, as the world begins its endless attempt to pull your attention outward, while you remain grounded in the inner stillness you claimed when everything was silent and nothing existed except you, and the responsibility you chose to accept before anyone else had even opened their eyes. There is a victory available to you each morning that no one else can see, no one else can measure, and yet it determines the course of everything that follows. It is not a victory over circumstance, nor over another person. It is a victory over the quiet resistance that lives within you. The resistance that greets you when you first open your eyes and reminds you of what is easy. The resistance that asks nothing from you except your surrender. Most people do not recognize this resistance as an opponent. They mistake it for themselves. They believe the voice that urges them to remain still is their own true voice. They believe the weight that holds them down is their own nature. And so they do not fight it. They obey it. In this obedience, they lose something long before the day has even begun. Because to conquer the morning is to prove that you are not ruled by the weakest part of yourself. When you wake, you stand at a dividing line. Behind you is the comfort of unconsciousness, the absence of effort, the safety of non-action. Before you is the demand of existence, the responsibility of choice, the burden and privilege of directing your own life. To remain where you are requires nothing. To rise requires a decision. This decision appears small. It is made in private. It earns no recognition. But it carries a meaning far greater than the act itself. It answers the question that defines your relationship with yourself. Do you command your life, or do you wait for life to command you? The person who cannot conquer the morning lives the rest of the day in quiet defeat. They may still perform their duties. They may still speak with confidence. They may still appear strong to others, but within themselves, they know the truth. They know they began the day by yielding, and this knowledge follows them. It speaks in moments when action is required. It whispers, reminding them of their earlier surrender. It weakens their certainty. It introduces hesitation. But the person who rises and conquers the morning carries a different knowledge. They carry proof. Proof that they can act against resistance. Proof that they are not governed by comfort. proof that their will is capable of authority. This proof becomes armor, because the greatest battles you will fight are not against the world. They are against the part of you that prefers ease over growth, distraction over purpose, indulgence over discipline. This opponent does not disappear. It returns each morning. It waits patiently. It hopes you will forget what you are capable of. And many do forget. They believe strength is something that appears when circumstances demand it. They do not realize strength is something that must be practiced when circumstances are still. The morning is this practice. It is the daily arena in which you face yourself without interference. No one forces you to rise. No one forces you to act. The outcome is determined entirely by your choice. This is why it reveals so much. If you cannot lead yourself here where nothing external stands in your way, how will you lead yourself when obstacles appear? If you cannot command your mind in silence, how will you command it in chaos? To conquer the morning is to establish dominance over the only thing you truly possess, your own will. Everything else can be taken from you. Your possessions, your position, your reputation, even your physical strength. But your will remains yours unless you surrender it. Each morning you either reinforce that ownership or weaken it. Each morning you remind yourself that you are capable of directing your actions, or you remind yourself that you are a follower of impulse. This reminder shapes you, because you become what you repeatedly prove yourself to be. If you repeatedly prove that you obey comfort, you become fragile. If you repeatedly prove that you obey purpose, you become resilient. Resilience is not built in moments of crisis. It is built in moments of decision that seem insignificant at the time. The decision to rise, the decision to begin, the decision to act without negotiation. These decisions send a message deeper than words. They tell your mind that you are serious, that you are not waiting for the perfect moment, that you are not dependent on motivation. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes without warning. But discipline, once established, remains, and discipline is born in the morning. When you conquer the morning, you do something more than complete an action. You change your position. You move from beneath yourself to above yourself. You stop being the one who is carried, and you become the one who carries. This shift affects everything. The challenges that once intimidated you begin to appear smaller. The distractions that once controlled you begin to lose their influence. The doubts that once silenced you begin to weaken. Not because the world has changed, but because your relationship with yourself has changed. You trust yourself. You trust that when the moment comes, you will act. This trust creates a quiet confidence. Not the confidence that seeks to be seen, but the confidence that does not need to be seen. The confidence that exists even in solitude. Because it was built there. Many spend their lives waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel certain, waiting to feel strong. They do not understand that readiness, certainty, and strength are created through action, not before it. The morning does not ask if you feel ready. It asks if you will rise anyway. It does not ask if you feel strong. It gives you the chance to become strong. Every morning the opportunity returns, unchanged, unaffected by your past failures or past victories. It does not judge you. It simply waits. It waits to see whether you will remain who you were, or whether you will step forward as someone greater than the version of yourself that existed the day before. In this way, conquering the morning is not a single act. It is a continuous declaration. A declaration that you will not live as a passive observer of your own life. A declaration that you will not accept the rule of your lesser instincts. A declaration that you are willing to face resistance not once, but repeatedly. Because you understand something others forget. That the greatest distance you will ever travel is the distance between who you are when you wake and who you choose to become before the world ever sees you. In those first unseen moments where the outcome is decided not by chance, not by fate, but by whether you have the courage to rise when everything within you asks you to remain where you are and remain who you have always been until now.